I want to get to the radio calls of both Penn State. Our buddy Steve Jones had a nice little call. Notre Dame's final call on the field goal. What do you do with James Franklin?
I mean, I don't think you do anything, unfortunately.
No, not fire him.
Yeah.
It's like, how do we... I don't know how to put it into words what I think about James Franklin, but there is something here. You can't 1 in 15. Maybe you
That's
start
a big
1 in
enough
4.
sample size where
Maybe you're 2 and 5. You get off to a shaky start in these top 5 matchups. 1 in 15, and you can scream about star, composite, ranking, all that till the cows come home. They're Penn State. 1 in 15.
The interesting thing, too, is that I feel like for some, they will go in, if Aller returns, that they might come into next year as the favorite in the Big Ten.
Yeah, that wouldn't shock me.
Right, Oregon's losing a lot. We know that. We know that Ohio State's, they have this big senior-laden team. Michigan is maybe on the uptick again, but it might be a freshman quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't be surprised if they entered the year as the favorite to win the Big Ten, which would be a little ironic because they're losing their best player, who might end up going number 1 overall in the draft, and he was dominant last night in Abdul Carter. So happy that he was able to play. I saw our buddy Max Chadwick bring up this point on Pro Football Focus about Aller and their offense next year. You gave the stat earlier in the show. They did not complete a single pass to a wide receiver last night. Semifinal with a chance to go to a national championship, and you didn't have a single catch from a wide receiver in that game. Their entire offense is Singleton, Allen, and Tyler Warren. Tyler Warren, we know, is gone. He's going to the NFL. He's a senior. He's out. He's going to be a top 10, top 12 pick. Now we await the decisions on Singleton and Allen. And our buddy Max Chadwick pointed to, ironically, a guy who was in the news yesterday saying, could we see this level of fall off in Carson Beck at Georgia? Carson Beck last year was good at Georgia. Not elite, but he was good. Similar to what we saw from Drew Aller this year. What did he have to work with last year? Brock Bowers, who just set all these records in the NFL without a quarterback in Vegas.
McConkey.
And Ladd McConkey, who had 1,000 yards as a rookie in L.A. Can you, either of you off the top of your head, name me the number 1 weapon in Georgia's offense? And that's a team, by the way, that won the SEC.
ETN.
I meant on the outside, like a pass catcher.
It was supposed to be Bell, but he had a ton of drops this year.
He was terrible.
Yeah.
No, I was going to say
so this,
they had a guy with a really cool, unique name that I'm forgetting right now on the spot that entered the portal but decided to still play in the playoff.
Turbo something. That guy, yeah.
Nitro Turbo.
Nitro Turbo. He's got one of the best names in college football.
An amazing name.
This is proving the point. One of the reasons that Beck fell off and their offense fell off this year is they had nobody to throw the football to. Now, I don't know what Penn State has waiting in the reserves, but I'd imagine if they had some talented guys, they would have caught a single pass last night in a semifinal game. And so that's the irony of all this is that they might go in next year as the favorite. We're going to do it again, but this is becoming a trend. Like, I push back on some of the early stuff for coaches when they lose 1 or 2 big games of, oh, this guy can't win the big game or this guy can't get over the hump. When you're now 1 in 15 against top 5 teams, Penn State played 3 legitimate, bona fide, extremely talented teams this year. They lost to all 3 of them. All three of them.
They were fraudulent. They were. They were a good team. I'm not saying they weren't good. I never understood, 1, how the bracket shook out, and 2, this idea they just stood in the top 5 basically all year, beating nobody.
Their best win was USC, Illinois.
Yeah, well, the USC game, they were down 20-3. I
needed
watched
overtime
that game.
to win the game.
Look, they hung with Oregon. They had a good offensive show in the Big Ten title game.
That was a whole other question for me out of the game of God, what the hell happened to Oregon's defense late in the season to get shredded by those guys?
That's a
whole different conversation.
That's a different conversation. They lost within 1 score of the Ohio State games. You could point to that. They still lost.
Couldn't score an offensive touchdown.
So, yeah, exactly. Will Howard gave them how many points?
7.
So I don't know, man. I just didn't look at them. I knew they were good. I'm not shocked that they beat SMU. They were at home in 20 degrees against a team from Dallas. I'm not shocked that they won their second game. Boise State, great team, good season. But it's Boise. That's where the Stars will make a difference.
Yeah.
They were fraudulent to me. And I had Penn State fans in my mentions when I said this on my gambling show. Funny they're not there today. This is what happens when they tend to play these kinds of teams.
Yeah, I also think last night, too, on top of it, that they got the extreme benefit of the whistle, which was ironic for me because Penn State fans out of the Big Ten title game spent a lot of time talking about how Oregon got every
I
favorable
had
call
somebody
in that
saying
game.
that's why they lost.
And that was the whole thing for a week of if we only had, fair officiating, we would have won the game. They were missing blatant holds. I disagreed with the PI call. There were calls all night that benefited Penn State throughout that game, and they were still unable to win. They ran the ball for 200 yards. You tell me they outrushed Penn State yesterday on the show, 204 to 116 for 4.9 yards per carry to 2.8 yards per carry.
And Warren finishes with 6 for 75 at a 12.5 average.
Yeah, I'm telling you, and Singleton has 3 rushing touchdowns. I'm telling you, Penn State's going to win that game. There's no chance Notre Dame can win if they get outrushed by nearly 100 yards by Penn State. That's why it was so alarming. So we'll see what happens with Drew Alder, but I just think this is ultimately who James Franklin is, and until he finds or is able to upgrade the right talent pieces that they need on that roster, this is who they're going to be. He can't beat Ohio State. He can't beat Michigan. Lost to Oregon in their first year in the conference, and they just were in this position because they were handed a cakewalk bracket where they got to play SMU and Boise State. Nobody, I think, all year looked at Penn State as legitimately one of the 4 best teams in the country.